I started out with a 410, then moved to a 20 gauge. Every squirrel and rabbit in Dallas County knew my name.
Hello, I'm Michael Riga with Broadside of a Barn Precision. As you see tonight, we have a new introduction video. Hope that you liked it very much. Tonight we're first going to go over some housekeeping things and go over several upcoming things and some basic stuff that we've added, looking to get. And then we're going to go in depth into the review of the creekside shooting match, go through how Sean and I did and how we shot and what all was entailed in the match. Starting tonight, we're going to go over one thing I've noticed is that we've been adding a lot of people, which I'm very thankful for, but I've noticed we've not had a lot of interaction with people, and I'd like to know what y'all would like to see, what you'd like me to go over, or really what would y'all as viewers like to see from us, and what can we bring to you. We have one definite upcoming match, and it's the PTS Precision Rifle Series match in Tennessee. Some of the other upcoming possible matches would be Steel City in Alabama. There's a new local match. Creekside is no longer going to be hosting precision rifle matches. The owner of the range, Joe Harris, has gone, I believe he's partners or owners of, or some form of affiliation, I'm not exactly sure, with Legion OTG, I believe it's called, in Blakely, Georgia. It's a very large facility. They have I believe it's a 1.5 mile long, high-powered range, in a known distance, 1,000-yard range, 360-degree shoot house. Yeah, there's a whole lot of good things there, and I very much would appreciate if you take a look at their site and give them, a good look over. But they have a match coming up in July that they just posted. I found out about it today. Looking at it, there's some things I'm very excited about just because of the range and looking through all of the equipment they have to use. But they did list in their night shoot, and I'm not sure if that means you have to have any kind of night vision, or how does that work? I'm unsure, so that's still very, very questionable. Like I said, there's the Steel City, and then Mammoth, which has been at Rock Castle, is actually going to be moved in January from Rock Castle to Legion in Blakely, Georgia. And Sean and I are very excited because we'd like to enter in under the Tough Man competition part of it, where you actually have to hike to each one of your stages. But now that it won't be in Kentucky, it'll be much better being not in the snow, which is something that I very much like. With that, there might be a few other little local matches. We've been kind of looking around, seeing what's available, and Sean is getting back to a normal 24-on, 48-hour schedule at his full-time job at the fire department. So we also got to see what would be available for us to shoot, or if it'd be like self-spotting individual matches that we might try to do. We'll also be adding some we'll be adding some upcoming equipment, and we've recently added some too. We've added some 300 blackout dies for Sean's suppressed upper. He has a 300 blackout that he's been working on. We're getting ready to make some brass for it, and when we get to that point, I'm actually going to video it to see what mistakes that I make, or what can be done to make brass from other forms of brass, and maybe it'd be a good education for people out there, especially not having all the tools or all the knowledge to do it. It'd be kind of a good way to trial by fire, and hopefully you wouldn't make some of the same mistakes I might make. We've also added the quick trim kit from Lee to trim the brass. We've had some problems with the brass being too long. I posted some photos where I kind of redneck trimmed it using a file, bringing it down the couple thousandths of an inch where it's to bring it into spec. With the Lee quick trim kit, it's a die system where you have your normal press, the die goes in. It's actually a die that goes in the press where you can have a crank handle like an old-fashioned drill, and it actually shaves the brass down to the correct size. We also got true Harris bipods that swivel to account for cans, and also notched legs. In the Creekside match, it proved to be a very, very good tool used on the rifle, and I'm actually very pleased with it. We got it. There were some issues with it, and when we post the videos with the recap and the walkthrough of it, some of the problems that came up with it we'll discuss then. We're soon going to be ordering, I believe it's a JEC muzzle brake. If I have the name wrong, I'm sorry. I'll get it corrected, and I'll also provide a link for it. It's actually called the, I believe it's the quick sleeve brake. What it is there's normal muzzle brake that they produce, but it's actually got a threaded ring on it, which allows you to put a sleeve over the side vent holes, so you can actually effectively turn the muzzle brake off if you're shooting in closed, like a closed container, or like the barrel that's hopefully you've seen the pictures of on the Facebook page, or if you're just shooting with your buddies and the muzzle brake becomes annoying with them. We're also been looking at, especially with Mammoth, if you're going to be hiking, we've been looking at different packs. I've looked at just kind of day style packs to modular Alice packs. I'm still really going over it, see what we need, what in budget fits our needs, and what do we actually need without getting too many options just to run the price up. Hopefully too, within the next day or two, we're also going to be ordering zero stops for Sean's SWFA scope, and when we get them in, we'll do kind of a little recap view of how you install them, what they are, and hopefully you like it very much. And now we're going to go on to the recap of the match. So hopefully, I don't drag this out too much, or I don't bore y'all. And if I do, again, it's a learning curve for everybody. Just let me know what I can do better with this. But on that note, we're going to go over the match now. With the review of the Sniper Challenge at Creekside, we'll also be posting a transcript of what I wrote. Please do mind the grammar errors. I've just quickly typed it up and it ended up being 2 pages, and I just haven't had the time to go back through, but I'll just post what I have. And also with this, I'm also going to post some of the photos that I did post to the Facebook page of the different stages. Sean and I were a spotter and shooter team. We each shot and then spotted for each other on each stage. Sean was shooting his 700 Remington with his 12 power SWFA scope. It's in a factory stock, as again we've been trying to get it into a chassis system, but with everything else, obviously money being a factor, it just has not happened yet, and it still shoots very well. I've of course brought the Tika T3 and the MDT LSS chassis. The first stage, you started out, we were at I believe they said it range find at with the laser at 522 yards. You were in the prone position. You took a cold bore shot at a popper target. It's a circle target that has reflex, will go down and come back up on its own. Then you had, I believe it was, I wrote down, I think it's 4 other targets or 3 other targets to shoot. The issue with it that made it very difficult was the backstop for all the targets, including the cold bore shot, was kudzu. So you weren't able to see any splash from dirt. You were able, with a good spotting scope, to be able to see actually some of the vapor trail, probably within about 20 feet of the impact, where you could actually see the good vapor coming off of the projectile. When you first started your position, you had to do 10 push-ups, both the shooter and the spotter, and then you engaged the targets with your cold bore shot first, and then the rest of the targets. One thing that complicated Sean's shooting was he had changed out the scope rings, so he lost his 0 on his rifle. So he had laser sighted it at Sharpshooters USA in Roswell at 25 yards, so he was kind of in the area, and he had a good idea of what his mill hold would be using the reticle, and I believe he stated it was 4.5 mils is what he held in elevation. His cold bore shot was taken. We didn't see it. We saw very varying aspects of his vapor trail when he went for the other targets, and eventually we had him move to the one target that had some dirt behind it, and we were able to actually see splash, and we were able to get him to that 4.5 mils, and I believe he ended up being probably about 6 to 8 inches off target off the right side. I missed my cold bore shot. I made 3 of the 4 hits. I was actually having to hold a 1/2 mil right to correct for some wind. On stage 2, we moved to the 425 mark on the side of the range. Our shooting position was from a downed tree, and they had sections of logs that were bucked, which is when you cut up a log and they were standing on end. One was roughly about sitting height, and the other was at a prone height. You were not allowed to use any kind of device to help you. All you had to do was just rest the rifle on the piece of cut wood, not the magazine, just the rifle itself, and you could not use any sling or rear bag. You had 4 targets to hit, and you could hit each target one time per revolution. You had 2 revolutions with it, but you had to hit every one first before you can move on. You had 4 minutes to do so. Sean's first shot was not seen. His second shot actually was seen where it fell at the 100-yard line, the 100-yard bench table, which was obviously 100 yards short, so it was only shooting about 300 yards. And afterwards, knowing that, the match director actually said another shot like that, we were actually going to be DQ'd. We were really unsure of what was going on, why we were shooting so low. His next one, he actually held 6 mils high to account for elevation and ended up about 16 feet short. At that point, Sean withdrew himself from the stage, took a 0. We were really trying to figure out what was going on. We discovered when we got back to the staging area that Sean had accounted for the 4.5 mils on the first stage on the reticle. We never dialed the turret to the correct elevation, and when we got to the 425-yard mark, I was looking at the dope chart for what our calculations were, and we brought his elevation down even more. I believe it was 0.6 mils, so we actually lowered the elevation even more. So we've completely forgot to dial up the elevation. On my turn, our initial one, you had to do the sitting. On both of them, you had to do sitting first and then prone. My first position, I put the rifle stock, the chassis, on the log, and because the design of the chassis, where the magwell comes in, it's an angle, and I was actually able to take the rifle and go into the log with that angle of the magwell and get a real good shooting position with my body weight. And I took a CMP style, civilian marksmanship style sitting stance with my elbows sitting in front of my knees and a lot of my body weight pushing forward. And I was able to make 2 hits. I was really frustrated with Sean's gun. We were running around trying to do that, and just my head was not in that stage at all. I had a really good stance, but just my natural point of aim was real off. I hit some of the targets. The 2 targets I hit, I had really good hits on them, but again, it's just, if your head's not in it, you're just not going to do well. Now, stage 3 had 2 parts, and you were actually behind the 500-yard line, so you're about 550 yards. There's an irrigation creek for all the fields that run behind the range. And this was, obviously, the match was the day after D-Day, and this was kind of to celebrate D-Day and to give a little bit of experience for it. What you had to do was wade into the irrigation creek, come out of the water, and there was a bank that was a very tall pitch, and probably, in total height, was probably about 12 to 16 feet above your head when you were at the creek level. And you had to belly crawl up the sandy mud hill, and when you got to the crest, you had to hit 4 diamonds, and after you did so, you had to belly crawl about 25 yards to another shooting position that's in woods to a tree where they had lined up and shoot the same 4 diamonds. You had 5 minutes to do so. Sean, he had an injured foot from a Tough Mudder race, so he took his time going into the creek. You waited about halfway out, which for me was right just over the bottom of my rib cage, so it came up to about the 4th, 5th rib, if any of y'all know what that is. It's probably about 1 hand width below the nipple line. And I was kind of rushing into the creek and back out as much, and my thoughts were so I could help Sean if I needed to grab the rifle. With rushing, you will see in the videos from it, we set the GoPro for it, I was rushing and I tripped over some underwater debris and did the twinkle toes as I started to fall into a hole, and I luckily didn't go in the water because you had to carry all of your gear including the rifle and ammunition. Luckily I didn't fall, but it pretty funny little dance on the video. Like I said, Sean took his time, went very slow and deliberate. Coming up the hill, he had some difficulty with his foot, just being able to get purchased to come up it. The gentlemen that were staging behind us for the next round, they were the next team to go, actually assisted him with his rifle up the hill. My initial shooting position was not very good. I actually had to go move from his left side to his right side. One thing we discovered that really hindered Sean was the fact with that 700 rifle, there's no external magazine or bottom metal, so he could only load, I believe it's 3 rounds plus 1 in the chamber. So we were really delayed. But with Sean having corrected his turret elevation, we had a good idea of where we were hitting, and I believe when I did the video, when we actually look at the video, Sean ended up getting 2 or 3 hits. When we do the recap of the video and the review of it, what we could do better, we'll actually see how many shots he took and how many hits. But I believe it was 2 or 3 hits that he got before he timed out on the 5-minute time mark. It's kind of a real good morale raiser when you start making hits, especially after a difficult stage like that. On my turn, obviously knowing where the underwater obstructions were, I really went as fast as I could. And one benefit of my rifle with the MDT LSS chassis is it's so light, it really shone compared to the other rifles there, that this was a really good rifle. It was very easy to manipulate across the water and through it and up the hill, up the bank of the crest. The Tika action did very well because there was a lot of sand everywhere. It got into the rifles, and the action was very good for it. Again, Sean went to my left side. He had to move to the right for a good sight picture. I actually scored all 4 of my hits, and I wasn't truthfully very prepared for that. My game plan was just to try and make as many of the 4 as I could. And like I said, when you don't have a game plan, you kind of have that brain fart when you get to that point. But
Thank you.
obviously I went up, made my 4 shots, hit him, then had my brain fart, crawled through the woods to my next position, and I believe I had 1 hit from that position before I timed out. One thing I discovered that I've known is a problem, I only have 1 magazine for that rifle right now, and it became a little bit of an issue having a single load. It just kind of eats up some time. Stage 4, you're at the 525 yard mark. Your ammunition was staged about 5 to 10 yards behind you in a staging area. And the way the stage worked was you start at the staging area, you pick up 5 rounds, your spotter's with you, you run up to the shooting bench, and you actually have to crawl under it. I have a picture I'll post with it. I believe it's already posted. If it's not, I'll also put it in this video. You had to crawl under the table and shoot at varying targets. Anytime you miss, though, you and your spotter had to run back to the staging area and then go back to your gun and shoot. And once your 5 rounds were up, you had to, again, run back to the staging area, pick up only 5 rounds, run back to the gun. So the more you miss, the more you become penalized. This is kind of where, with the picture with the barrel of training, crawling in it, shooting out of it, it was really good kind of idea. You knew kind of from using the barrel, you understood the positioning you need to get in underneath the table. You kind of understood it. You had a better feeling of how to do it. So that's where kind of the practicing goes very well. Sean's first stage, he started with a few misses, but once we corrected, he had very good hits. I believe he had 5 hits with it. Actually, I believe he had more than that. He had 6 or 7. Again, though, with his foot hurting, it made going back and forth on the misses slow. But with Sean's rifle, with the single load that we've been having to do because it only holds 3, it actually worked out very well because the gun was very adept to it. When it was my turn, I started running into some problems. I kept shooting just off the right side. I eventually had to end up holding almost 1 mil into the right side of the picture to account for going off the right side. There was not that much wind, and we're really having to do some research of why was I doing that. Did the turret slip because it's just a friction screws that are on the spline? Was it just that's the way it just started shooting? Maybe there's some fouling in there that caused it. But I did have several good hits. But again, I still need to do a bit more research of why was I ended up shooting right so much. Sean and I finished very strong, especially for Sean's first match and my second match of that style and that physical endurance with it. Sean did finish last though with a score of 10, but considering that he never shot anything like that before, we had the problem with the turret and not having a zero. I truthfully believe he actually did better than my first time as well. I believe I've actually posted a score. I'd have to look, but I think his performance was just better because mine was at shorter distances. My score finished, I finished somewhat in the middle of the pack, towards more so the back side of the middle with a score of 28. But, you know, again, comparing to my first match where you were at varying distances of 100, 300, 400, then 500, and this was mainly 504, and I think actually closest was the 425. I feel I did very strong. We performed very strong. You know, I hope this kind of provides some information of what to expect if you want to get into match shooting or just long distance shooting, and hopefully this piques some interest with you. Over the next couple of days, we'll be working on the video breakdown and some of the education from the videos from stage 3 with the crossing the creek and the crawl, and really breaking them down, looking at trigger control, sight alignment, you know, especially a lot of the fundamental stuff, even loading the bipod, you know, and seeing how this might affect some stuff. And again, like some of the problems we had with the Harris bipod. I'm going to try and work on those tonight, but we'll get those out in the next couple of days, and hopefully you've really much enjoyed this. As always, please like, share, and subscribe to the video.
I started out with a 410 and moved to a 20 gauge. Every squirrel and rabbit in Dallas County knew my name. I sat on the stand